I prepared my remarks in advance of yesterday's massacre in Connecticut. In some ways, the words I'm about to say may seem less relevant. Others may be more poignant. But I hope you'll permit me to go forward with the remarks that I wanted to say, because I think they're the things that we should say. To the trustees of Saint Vincent College, thank you. You are the stewards of a remarkable institution, the trajectory for which, in the words of your founder, is forward, always forward, everywhere forward. To Archabbot Douglas Nowicki, thank you. You are generous and considerate beyond what is fair-minded to expect, even from a man committed to God. Your servant leadership extends from Latrobe to Taipei, from across the Pittsburgh region to parts of the globe most of us will never see. To the President, Brother Norman Hips, thank you. You are a humble yet forceful leader, positioning this college for prosperous days now and for years to come. And to you, the momentary graduates of Saint Vincent College, your families, your friends, and your guests, thank you. I'm deeply honored to join you in being forever associated with this special place. Today is a day that we celebrate and honor you for your grit and perseverance, for your pursuit of knowledge and learning, for bettering the lives of generations that will follow you. That's why you did this. And you accomplished all of this in a remarkably special corner of the world. Years from now, perhaps even today, you'll think fondly upon the teachers who demanded excellence with more exactitude than you thought reasonable. Friends whose own dreams, stories, or wit inspired something unexpected in you. And even the cold winter winds blowing down from the western ridge of the Alleghenies. Across these 200 acres is an educational community whose faculty endeavor to uphold the Benedictine tradition, a tradition rooted in faith, service, and learning. On its very best days, this college taught and reminded you that you can and should explore ideas continuously. You may have come here to earn a degree that would improve your job prospects. You may have come here to participate in collegiate-level athletics or arts. You may have come here to follow in the footsteps of a parent, a sibling, or a friend. Whatever the reasons, while you were here, I suspect you learned, you really learned, to explore, to meander, to wonder, and to wander. You found that on occasion, you could turn to the last chapter of a book to find that sought-after nugget, rather than trudge through the first 14 chapters. You could browse library shelves, surf the web, or converse with total strangers, and along the way, discover something extraordinary. You could stroll the nature preserve and be stopped cold by a confounding question. Of course, you couldn't and you didn't avoid hard work. Still, you found permission and even encouragement to explore. And in so doing, you were reminded to think, to imagine, and to dream. Never lose that curiosity that was nurtured here. I'm counting that, and so too are countless others. Indeed, it's that trust in you and this college as faithful, serving, and lifelong curious learners that surely attracted Fred Rogers to this place. And it was Fred Rogers and his legacy that first brought me to this campus. When we lost Fred Rogers 10 years ago, we lost a children's multimedia pioneer, whom as host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood from 1968 until 2001, combined the rigor of child development theory with beautiful entertainment. He was an artist, a minister, musician, environmentalist, a husband, father, brother, friend, a native of Latrobe. To me, he was a grandfatherly, doting person whom I watched on the beloved half-hour of television, often sitting beside my brother and my mother as we did so. And those of you that knew him, or knew of him as I did, must be thinking of your own stories right now. It's on this campus that Fred Rogers created what is known today as the Fred Rogers Center for Early Learning and Children's Media. It's a center attracting national and international attention for its leadership in supporting professionals across educational children's multimedia, for its leadership in equipping early learning teachers, caregivers, and families with top-of-class online materials, and for its leadership in establishing standards for what constitutes high-quality learning in this digital age, when even young toddlers outsmart their parents on touch screens and smartphones. And so let's move forward, always forward, everywhere forward, mindful of what Fred Rogers taught us. His words were plain spoken, they were honest, they were heartfelt. He once said, "The thing I remember best about successful people I've met all through the years is their obvious delight in what they're doing. And it seems to have very little to do with worldly success. They just love what they're doing, and they love it in front of others." That's an important lesson for us all on a day as this. Love what you do and love it in front of others. Now, that's not easy to do, even on sunny days, but it's worth trying. And that's what I myself try to do each day, to love what I do and to love it in front of others. Now, that's probably easier for me to do than for others. I'm blessed in my vocation. I work on behalf of a private charitable foundation, the purpose of which is to improve the lives of children, especially disadvantaged children in our region. We give away money to support kids, and you'd have to be nuts not to be crazy about that. Yet doing it well, loving it, and loving it in front of others isn't as easy as you might think. While we often see the world through rose-colored windows, from which we're witnesses to remarkable people doing selfless things, we also endure pitch-black days when we bear witness to horrible inequities, political pandering, abject poverty, small-mindedness, and misery. There's a Chinese curse that says, "May you live in interesting times." Well, to our fortune and our misfortune, we live in interesting times. Amidst a world bedeviled by the ravages of war, natural disasters, and massacres like yesterday, it's practically impractical not to be numbed to what's going on. Even such an optimist as Anne Frank would surely question how any one of us could respond to these interesting times. And sadly, we live in interesting times, right here, where the world's problems insidiously wear down local families and their children. Food insecurity isn't limited to refugee camps in Africa. In the 11-county area of southwestern Pennsylvania, more than 323,000 people aren't certain where their next nutritious meal is going to come from. That's akin to the entire population of Westmoreland County going hungry each day. Severe poverty isn't limited to leadership-starved islands south of our borders. You could sell out PNC Park twice for baseball games on a beautiful summer day in downtown Pittsburgh, and you still wouldn't have matched in people the number of households that live on $10,000 a year or less. That's a third of your annual tuition. And child abuse isn't limited to dark alleyways in Southeast Asia. There are thousands of substantiated cases in Pennsylvania every year. Thousands of children abused. Yes, in these interesting times, soberingly tarnished with hatred and violence of all sorts, you could easily and reasonably be forgiven for asking if people, rather than being good at heart, really are just ambitious, vindictive, and rapacious. It takes great faith, grit, and imagination to think otherwise. It seems to be all too elusive. And yet, hope endures. And I'm lucky enough to spot it all the time. in dilapidated school buildings where teachers refuse to give up on their kids, whether or not they have the parents, the health care, or the supplies they need. In early learning settings, overflowing with colors and songs and giggling, despite being located in dismal neighborhoods you'd never want to step foot in. In library rooms, long ago left to gather dust, now reborn with digital arts and media, attracting new crowds of teenagers others didn't think wanted to learn. You see, it's hope. Hope is so much more than a wish. Hope is what calms a baby when a caregiver lifts her from her crib. Hope is what awakens desperately poor children with the promise of a new day. Hope is what lifts refugees, evacuees, and outcasts. And hope is what drives those who deep down inside believe that they can comfort the weary and remove their pain. It's hope, not money, not prestige, not authority, that sustains nurses and teachers and good people of all sorts. Fred Rogers called them helpers, all of whom are too often too tired and too spent, but keep at it because they know they're making a difference. Our good fortune is that they are, and our good fortune is that you will too. The world's interesting times will play out on the stages of your lives in very real and very personal ways. And this place has prepared you well to ask those questions that others might not have the courage to ask. Some of you as nurses will go about your rounds diligently, and at an unexpected moment, you will be the ones who notice the weary eyes of a child begging that you bring an end to her abuse. Be bold enough to ask the questions you know you should ask. Some of you as teachers, you'll stand in front of your classrooms day after day, and you'll be the ones who see an otherwise talented child lagging behind simply because he doesn't have the nutrition that he needs. Be confident to ask why out loud. As analysts, technicians, and salespeople, you'll serve your clients eagerly, and you'll be the one who spots a stunning impropriety. Be gutsy enough to ask what's going on. And as parents, you'll witness inequality or ailments or sadness. Be undaunted in asking what you can do. What's going on and what can I do? These are the two ethical questions you'll face in this lifetime. Be ready to ask them. And when you do, be prepared to change. Be prepared to be changed. I did, and I wasn't. Nearly 20 years ago, in the then and maybe still crumbling borough of McKees Rocks, just west of downtown Pittsburgh, I dedicated a summer service to some remarkable children and young people. They knew that they were poor, desperately poor. They weren't the sort of kids who would ever fall asleep dreaming of trips to Disney World or weekends at Grandma's or even gifts from Santa Claus. Those were for other kids. They fell asleep to sporadic gunfire, hungry stomachs, and the sounds of cockroaches crawling beneath their beds. They sometimes kept the lights on just to keep the bugs away. Their lives were hard, too hard for their ages, or any ages, really. And I won't forget what I saw. The pained expression of an 11-year-old girl who had been raped repeatedly by her mother's 32-year-old boyfriend. The holes dotting doorways carved by late-night gunfights. And the haunting hug of a 4-year-old who, after just my first day there, pleaded with me, "Come back tomorrow." But what I remember most, and keep it with me always, is their joy. The kind of joy that only kids can ooze. Bounding to your side to read a much-beloved book, swinging and skipping across the blacktop outside, delighting in home-cooked barbecue with shouts for more. I was then, as I am now, emotionally and intellectually a wreck, torn down by the neglect around me, shaken by violence that I personally experienced, yet buoyed by some headstrong women determined to write new futures for their children. I was awash in questions, and those questions, to this day, are still changing me. You see, before that summer 20 years ago, I imagined myself as some hotshot international diplomat. When I returned again to Pittsburgh 10 years later, I was on a lucrative track to partnership at a prestigious law firm. Today, I'm still trying to learn from those kids in McKees Rocks and to help them. And that's what troubles me most. I know full well that the joy of those kids, at least those still with us, has likely been extinguished by the callousness of scarcity, growing up in a neglected housing complex located behind a bankrupt shopping center, not far from abandoned and toxic mills. Our interesting times will outrage, upset, and sometimes even discourage you. But keep in mind, these were the times of Fred Rogers too, and he was profoundly hopeful. And he was hopeful about you and your being you. It's not the honors and the prizes and the fancy outsides of life which ultimately nourish our souls, Fred counseled us. It's the knowing that we can be trusted, that we never have to fear the truth, that the bedrock of our very being is good stuff. And as graduates of Saint Vincent College, harness the good stuff you learned here. Honesty, dependability, humility, graciousness, integrity, love, forgiveness. Yes, I'm asking you to be like Fred Rogers. Now, you don't have to be Fred Rogers. The world doesn't need heroes. Rather, what the world needs most is more people with the good stuff. People willing to be like Fred Rogers every day. Everyday Freds. When I started the Gregg Behr Foundation, I kept hearing this phrase from educators and caregivers. Kids are different today. By different, they meant that they weren't connecting with kids like they once had, and that kids weren't mastering the skills necessary to prepare them for uncertain futures. They were worried, and at that time, 6 years ago, those offering solutions proposed only more of the same: standardized exams and rigid curricula. It didn't seem right. If things were different, we needed different solutions. So curious, I immersed myself in asking questions about kids today. Once I turned to the nascent field of learning sciences, I found authors who outlined not merely incremental changes in youth from previous generations, but rather remarkable discontinuities. Citing the arrival and rapid dissemination of digital technology and maker learning practices, the authors describe today's so-called digital natives as not merely consumers of information and products, but also creators. Provoked by what this meant for learning, I arranged meetings with teachers, technologists, and museum directors. One cup of coffee led to a breakfast meeting that led to a design retreat. Within a short period of time, hundreds of people, artists, scientists, principals, and tutors, were networking with one another. They were commonly wrestling with such issues as how best to adjust instructional practices, redesign classrooms and playgrounds, and ignite students' passion to learn. Locally, this network came to be known as Kids+Creativity, and I did my best to nurture it. I blasted information widely. I invited fresh thinkers to Pittsburgh and organized delegations to attend events elsewhere. I introduced unexpected partners to one another, such as game designers to teachers, roboticists to early childhood educators, and entrepreneurs to librarians. Plus, I advocated for funding, helping to secure millions in new dollars from national and regional foundations, as well as federal agencies and even venture capitalists. Today, Pittsburgh stands at the leading edge of a worldwide learning revolution. From a children's museum transformed by craft making, to a zoo utilizing robots to teach conservation, to an elementary school teaching math with digital toys. Pittsburgh's schools, museums, and libraries are reimagining and revolutionizing education, and tens of thousands of kids are reconnecting. Youth previously in danger of dropping out are now activated, enrolled in new courses, staying after school, and finding new reasons to work hard. That's hope. Hope spurred, ignited, and aroused by local educators, technologists, and artists who, like Mr. Rogers did, are making use of child-centered media, technology, and the arts to engage kids in learning, to inspire creative play, and to generally provoke their innate curiosity. These people are everyday Freds, quite literally. They're modern-day Fred Rogers. And in your own way, in your own job, in your own home, you too can be Fred-like. In 1997, when the television industry honored Mr. Rogers with a Lifetime Achievement Award, he reminded the audience that all of us have special ones who have loved us into being. He then famously asked, "Would you take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are?" In that same spirit today, I'd like you to take 10 seconds to remind yourself why you do what you do, embrace the good stuff you learned here, and promise never, ever to lose the curiosity, the hope, or the love for what you do. Please take 10 seconds. I can't help but turn one last time to the principled wisdom of Fred Rogers. If you could only sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet, how important you can be to the people you may never dream of, there is something of yourself that you will leave at every meeting with another person. Graduates, you will leave something of yourself in every hospital room, in every classroom, in every conference room. Be sure that it's the good stuff. Samuel Hazo, a fellow graduate of the University of Notre Dame and one-time state poet of this Commonwealth, confronted me with this admonition when I first read his plain-spoken poem to a commencement of scoundrels. For today, we'll retitle the relevant stanza of his poem to a commencement of Freds. I wish for you what I wish myself. Hard questions and the nights to answer them, and grace of disappointment, and the right to seem fool for justice. That's enough. Cowards might ask for more. Heroes have died for less. Thank you for the honor of inviting me to be here with you today. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood because of you. Thank you.